Riders, Disregarding Henry here with another episode of Unmade Masterpieces. Harmony Korine is no stranger to controversy. He's a filmmaker that, like one of his biggest influences, Werner Herzog, is known for blurring the lines between fiction and reality, often hiring real people instead of actors, and trying to capture genuine moments rather than scripted scenes. This has attracted a certain amount of criticism. With films like Gummo, Julian Donkey Boy, Mr. Lonely, he's been accused of exploiting people or making fun of them because of the way he presents them. He's been accused of invading people's privacy, and much more. He's routinely worked with people with various physical and mental disabilities. He's worked with drug addicts, ex-cons, neo-Nazis, all without judgment. The man has become something of a legend. I've read various rumors about his past, and I'm not quite sure how much of it is true. If I were to believe all the various things I've heard over the years, then he was raised in Nashville, Tennessee, got his first tattoo at the age of 12, ran away from home at 16 to join the circus, was discovered in a skate park by the photographer Larry Clark at age 19, and commissioned to write his first feature film script, which was turned into the 1995 film Kids. Using the notoriety gained from that film, he made his debut as a writer-director in 1997 at the age of 23 with Gummo. He went on to make the Dogma 95-influenced Julian Donkey Boy in 1999 before his life began spiraling out of control due to drug abuse. He accidentally burned down several of his houses and ended up homeless. He was banned from The Late Show with David Letterman after he was caught backstage stealing from Meryl Streep's purse. His teeth began falling out, and at that point, broke and living on the streets, thinking he would never make another film, he decided enough was enough and started trying to put his life back together. He quit the drugs, traveled the world, spent a few years with a cult in South America, and made a return to filmmaking in 2007 with Mr. Lonely. Since then, he's made the bizarre video experiment Trash Humpers, released in 2009, and Spring Breakers in 2013, his most commercially successful film, which has led to the financing of his biggest project yet, titled The Trap. The story's being kept under wraps, but it has attracted actors like James Franco, Benicio del Toro, Idris Elba, and Al Pacino. He's led a unique life, to say the least, and he's only 42. It's unbelievable that he managed to survive past the age of 30, considering how reckless he was in his 20s, and none of his projects illustrate that more than his notorious unfinished film, Fight Harm, which is believed to have entered production about 1999. Fight Harm was once described by Korine during a Q&A moderated by none other than John Waters as Buster Keaton crossed with a snuff film. Basically, the idea behind it was that Korine would go around and provoke complete strangers into fighting him. The brawl would be captured by hidden cameras, and then the footage would be turned into a feature film. A comedy. Korine established a set of rules for the film, such as every person he fought had to be physically bigger than him. They had to throw the first punch. The camera crew was not allowed to interrupt the fights, unless his life was clearly in danger. And, to top it all off, the cinematographer was David Blaine. Yes, the David Blaine, the street magician. He and Korine are good friends, and had collaborated on several projects before. According to Korine, in several interviews he's given over the years, and information I found on the unofficial fan site harmony-korine.com, about 6 or 7, possibly as many as 9 fights were shot, which resulted in about 15 minutes or perhaps nearly an hour of usable footage, which was far less than he expected, overestimating how long real-life fights actually are. I haven't been able to find any information about what the actual plot was supposed to be, if any, other than the premise was that Korine was playing a man who got off on violence and found pleasure in harming himself. He stated that Fight Harm was inspired by his love of silent films, and I suppose he was trying to take that sense of genuine danger you get from a Buster Keaton or Harold Lloyd film to the next level. My guess is, if a script was written for this film, it was probably similar to the script Korine wrote for Julian Donkey Boy, just a series of brief outlines for scenes, and then, during filming, improvisation would take over and Korine would just try to capture what happened. I can't quite believe that he envisioned the entire film as non-stop hardcore fights. There must have been at least a few scenes he had planned that didn't feature his character getting the hell pounded out of him. But after breaking a few bones and being arrested several times, the then 25-year-old Korine ended up abandoning the film after a fight with a bouncer resulted in a shattered ankle. Korine didn't end up getting proper medical attention for the break, and the bone did not heal correctly, resulting in the cancellation of not only Fight Harm, but also a tap dancing film he planned to shoot next, with himself in the lead. Korine has long been obsessed with tap and vaudeville, which can be seen in nearly all of his features. The footage that was shot for Fight Harm, which was done on video, reportedly still exists, but Korine has not been able to decide what he wants to do with it. At one point, he was planning to show it at an art exhibit in a museum, similar to a piece he created called The Diary of Anne Frank Part 2, using deleted scenes from Gummo. But I don't believe that ended up happening. In more recent interviews, he said that the footage is now extremely difficult for him to watch. I'm guessing because it comes from a much more self-destructive time in his life. From the sounds of it, Fight Harm would have been a sort of precursor to the Jackass series, which premiered the following year on MTV. But I don't know, the idea of a bunch of guys performing stunts where they hurt themselves is a little different from the idea of a director getting drunk, popping homemade Quaaludes, and going around picking fights with innocent strangers. And there was real damage being done to these people. In that final fight with the bouncer, which Korine recounted to Adam Heimlich of the New York Press in a 1999 interview, he describes at one point picking up a brick and smashing the guy over the head with it. Blood everywhere. Before that fight ended, the bouncer had given Korine a concussion, knocked him unconscious, and then ended the fight by jumping on his left ankle with both legs and snapping it like a twig. Korine was then arrested and spent the night in jail, unaware that his ankle was broken due to the concussion. Korine's controversial method of blurring fiction and reality would have been pushed to its ethical limits with this film. Perhaps it even did cross some kind of line, and I'm sure most would have found it unwatchable. It's hard to say since no one's seen the footage and we can't know for sure what specifically the finished film would have been like. Korine has been quoted as saying that he wanted to push humor to extreme limits, and his ambition with Fight Harm was to make the funniest film ever made. This is a difficult one to analyze. It makes you really ask just how much an artist should be allowed to get away with in the name of their art. I can't defend Korine's actions, but I will say that this is the reason I find him so interesting as an artist. He's not afraid to push those boundaries. He's willing to go as far as it takes to get the reaction he wants. Or if he's not looking for a specific reaction, he'll do it just to see what happens. This is a project that has fascinated me for years. Part of me is disgusted by it, part of me is intrigued, part of me finds it hilarious. I'd be lying if I said I didn't want to see that footage, but as it stands, it doesn't seem likely to ever be made available to the public. Like Jerry Lewis's The Day the Clown Cried, this is one that will probably remain locked in the vaults indefinitely, to be talked about in hushed tones by wide-eyed film students around the campfire in the dead of night when the moon is full. This has been Unmade Masterpieces with DisRegarding Henry. If you could subscribe, or like the video, or leave a comment, it's all noticed, it's all appreciated, and it all helps. I've got plenty of reviews and other videos on my channel if you feel like checking it out, and of course, thanks for watching.